welcome to Live at the Legislature. I'm Jill Kuramoto. Every week we sit down with Hawaii senators to talk about the events and the issues that are happening within this legislative session. And this morning we're joined by Senate Majority Leader Senator J. Kalani English. Senator English represents District 7, which encompasses Hana, East and Upcountry Maui, Molokai, Lanai, and Kaho'olawe. Good morning to you. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
So we are now down to our final days of this legislative session. I'm curious to know, what are your takeaways from this session?
Well, I think we've had a very good session. And I'll say an orderly session, a session where a lot of controversial bills got heard in a civil fashion. And we passed some really big bills. Our Choice, Our Care, Our Choice, which is the Death with Dignity bill.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's been around since the late 90s. And I remember we had very controversial hearings back then, all the way through now. And this time, remember the Senate passed it last year. We sent it to the House. The House chose not to pass it then. The House passed another bill this year. They sent it over to us, and since we already voted on it once, we voted on it again and passed the bill. So we put that bill into law, and it went up to the governor, and he signed it. We also did things like the pesticide buffer zones,
right, that was
which has been a long debate.
Right, a lot of families have been protesting against that.
Right, especially in my district, it's a big issue. Especially for those living around schools. But we had to really carefully craft this bill, because if we did it wrong, we would also make, for instance, tenting of homes for termites that are in the buffer zone illegal. So we had to craft it very carefully so that they could do that.
And Hawaii now is the first state in the nation to ban, I don't even know how to pronounce the pesticide.
Yes. I can't pronounce it either. So yes, we banned that certain pesticide. And actually, it's a phased out use over time. And then we also did the oxybenzone ban, or the sunscreen ban. And this has been one that's been in the works for a while. Again, very important because it affects our coral reefs, but we also have to balance those people with skin cancer and with other types of ailments that need sunscreens. What we understand is that they're reformulating the big companies that create the base ingredients are before the FDA, asking for a reformulation that takes out these substances from the sunscreen. So, hopefully in about 2 to 3 years, they'll be able to have a new product without these things in it. In the meantime, it is banned. We also did, of course, we did a study on family leave, paid family leave, which is a big issue, something that a lot of people want, but we have to balance it very carefully. So we've asked for more study on that, and asking that we look at the issue more closely for action next session.
And then the CONAM.
Yeah, the Constitutional Amendment. So the Constitutional Amendment passed. It'll be placed on the ballot this election, and it'll be asking the voters, shall we have a surcharge on property taxes to pay for education? So, the HSTA really wants this bill. Advocates for education really think it's a good bill. But it depends how this is applied. So the question will go to the voters. If it is approved, then the next legislative session will have to figure out how to implement it, which means, the original Senate position, of course, was that for properties valued less than $1 million, that this wouldn't apply to. We had some other safeguards built in there. The House wanted to go with a different route. We agreed with that. Just to get the question on the ballot, and then after that we'll see how it goes. So if it passes, we will take this up next year.
Right. Okay. Well, I know that you're particularly proud of the number of bills and the types of bills that have align with the Senate Majority's legislative program.
Yes, our program dealt with the 17 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And really what it did was it placed a lot of these types of issues in a global context. It allowed us to look at the matrix that the rest of the world is being graded on. And it also allowed us to look at how we're going to holistically, as a whole, move government ahead and move people ahead so that we reduce our consumption, we become better stewards of the land and of the ocean, and we take into account more sustainable practices. So, I'm very proud that the Senate was able to put this together and then put our bills in this context so that we can have really good outcomes, and we can look at how we can measure these in the future. So I think we're quite successful with doing this, and you know, many of the environmental bills, for example, that we did fall squarely within this. Of course, you know, we're dealing with sea level rise, and we're dealing with climate change as the storms on Kauai, the storms on Oahu, the storms on Maui, and future storms will show. So we're looking at things like reinsurance. How do we ensure that we have a rapid response to massive destruction? And, you know, the big question that we're all dealing with is called managed retreat. How do we start moving things away from the shoreline, infrastructure, roads, things like that, schools, so that we're less in the way of, in harm's way.
Right. And then this is also requiring some long-term thinking too,
yes.
ahead of time.
Yeah.
Are you going to be approving plans that are be built
Well,
on
exactly.
the shoreline, things like that, right?
Exactly. In fact, you know, I mean, for example, we opened the Lahaina bypass in Maui, and that moves the highway inland. When they complete the entire bypass, the whole highway should be moved in, which would, you know, ensure access from that side of the island to the central part to the airport. But if we don't start doing this now, we will have highways falling into the ocean, as you can see on Maui. Other islands, you can see it. On Oahu, certainly you can see on the other side of this island where this is happening. So we have to plan for this now.
And it's a really a different way of thinking. It's a
Yeah.
paradigm shift on how you plan, how you think, how you...
Right, and it's happening at all levels. So, you know, the Land Use Commission, for example, they're rewriting their rules, and they're in the process of redoing how they look at land entitlements and land use. We've had to think about things like what happens when a structure becomes inundated. That means it goes into the ocean. Because under current law, it becomes government property. So who is responsible for removing the structure? Who is responsible for the debris? How do we deal with property taxes and landowners that have structures that will become inundated? The Climate Change Commission that we created 2 years ago actually has a, if you go to their website, you know, has a map showing all of the TMKs, the parcels along the ocean, and an approximate inundation period. So you can go and look at your property and say, well, okay, within 20 years we'll be inundated, or within 15 years we should have water coming into our property.
All right, lots to think about. Very engaging conversation. Thank you very much, Senator. And thank you for watching Live at the Legislature. We'll see you next week.
Live at the Legislature is a live half-hour weekly news program that focuses on the issues, legislation, and topics of importance emerging from this year's legislative session. Each week, state senators and representatives provide a variety of perspectives on the issues from both sides of the aisle. Tune in to Live at the Legislature weekly to get exclusive updates on what's happening in Hawaii's legislature.
Do you know your legislators? Visit capitol.hawaii.gov and enter your street name to find detailed information about your representatives and senators. From your district number to the committees and current bills your legislators have introduced, this is an easy way to stay up to date with what is happening in your community. If you're looking for detailed information concerning Hawaii State Senate and House hearings, please visit olelo.org/gov-archives. Videos are arranged by date, with the most recent at the top of the list.
Are you looking for an easy way to get involved in the legislative process? Stop by the Public Access Room located in Room 401 at the Hawaii State Capitol. The Public Access Room provides citizens of Hawaii's facilities, services, and equipment to enhance their ability to participate in the legislative process. The public is welcome to track and affect legislation pending before the Hawaii State Legislature.
Live at the Legislature is a live half-hour weekly news program that focuses on the issues, legislation, and topics of importance emerging from this year's legislative session. Each week, state senators and representatives provide a variety of perspectives on the issues from both sides of the aisle. Tune in to Live at the Legislature weekly to get exclusive updates on what's happening in Hawaii's legislature.
Do you know your legislators? Visit capitol.hawaii.gov and enter your street name to find detailed information about your representatives and senators, from your district number to the committee.
Oh, God, look at this turkey neck. Oh. Am I on? Aloha, I'm Carolyn Tanaka, and welcome to the House of Representatives segment of Live at the Legislature. We are going into the final week of the 2018 session, and the lawmakers have tackled some tough issues, and they've taken on some significant and bold actions to address some of the key issues facing the state: housing, homelessness, and grease lightning action on funding for Kauai. With us this morning is House Majority Leader Della Al-Biladi. She is a member of the House Leadership Team, along with Speaker Scott Saiki and Representatives Sylvia Luke, Mark Nakashima, and Dee Morikawa. Good morning, Representative. We had a bit of a shaky start there, but tell us, let's talk about some of the key bills that are moving through this week.
Carolyn, we have had a very productive session, and so my three themes today are productive, responsive, and forward-looking. We have our big $570 million affordable housing package that's going to build out over 25,000 affordable rental units by 2030. We have our huge initiative for homeless services and to address those issues. That's over $30 million, $50 million. Altogether, we're spending and investing quite a lot to fund those two issues, housing and homelessness, that were identified as top priorities. Mm-hmm. In addition to those bills, we have a slew of bills that we introduced related to civil rights. We have the state Title IX bill for women. We have numerous health and human services bills. We also have the HST amendment, just a number of bills addressing longstanding issues. I can't forget we also have our pesticide bills as well as our oxybenzone ban bill.
Well, I want to go back to the affordable housing bill and the homeless legislation. For the affordable housing bill, tell us, what are the more significant or unique items in this bill?
So there's a $200 million cash infusion into the Rental Housing Trust Fund to generate approximately 1,600 affordable rental units for families at or below 80% AMI. We also have GET exemptions for construction of affordable rental units for families at or below 140% AMI. So what we're really doing is we identified various areas on the housing spectrum in which to invest monies to ensure that development is going along all lines.
We've done this before. What makes this one different?
I think this is very different because, one, we clearly put in a huge cash infusion. Also, we were looking at other ways. It wasn't just those large bills. We also have bills for Front Street in Maui. We have tucked into our big bill, we have a $50,000 study to look at housing for those who are disabled and have higher functional needs. Mm-hmm. So I think we were wise and smart in how we deployed our resources, looking at the whole spectrum of affordable housing.
And on the homeless front?
Same thing, Carolyn. We put in $30 million for Ohana zones, giving the governor flexibility to identify what will work for their counties. But kind of not as well reported was the monies that we put in for the homeless emergency assessment pilot project where we know that our emergency departments are ground zero for homeless and when the sweeps occur. We put in money for medical respite, which is another pilot project with the private sectors to find housing for those who are some of our most medically difficult. You know, once they go through the ER, where do they go? And that's another big piece of our homeless problem. So I think we were very smart in deploying various resources. One other program I would mention is the law enforcement assisted diversion. So again, you know, it's dealing with the homeless population rather than putting them into jail, finding them the appropriate programs, whether it's substance abuse, mental health, counselors, finding them different ways to address the homeless problems in innovative ways.
Well, you know, I think there is no doubt that the lawmakers definitely took on the tough issues, and you met your goal of starting to address key issues that are affecting our state. What do you say to the voters out there who say, that's your job, what's the big deal, why you never do them sooner?
Well, I think what folks have to understand about the legislative process is that we come back every year. They're for short sessions, 60 legislative days, but we are tackling huge problems, complex problems that require us to do study and to look at what the proper solutions are. So I mentioned earlier that we were a forward-looking legislature. We have a number of big bills that also passed. Some people might have been disappointed with the paid family leave. Well, we took it very far this year, and now the step that we're taking is going to be to do a market analysis of what really will work for Hawaii. Another big area that some people might be disappointed in, but quite frankly I'm not, is that we know cesspools are going to be a big problem. Again, we have a cesspool working group that's going to look at what are the appropriate solutions, both is there better technology and innovation, and then what's going to work for the various islands. We know that upcountry Maui is very different from Waimanalo or Kaneohe on the island of Oahu. One final kind of other forward-looking thing is our carbon sequestration working group. We know that carbon offsets, carbon taxes are going to be something that we need to look at. Again, we made that working group a permanent working group because it's going to take us a while to identify the long-term solutions for these complex problems.
I think one of the good examples of you cannot do everything in a session is the way the House and the Senate took on the Death with Dignity bill. You didn't pass it the first time, but
we came back, and you know, that's one where we were, I think, very productive. It's been a long-standing issue. We studied it over the interim. We took in a lot of stakeholder input. We looked at best practices across the nation, and I believe that we have the very best bill in the nation at the moment. And so that's how we have been both productive, responsive, and forward-looking.
I want to we've got about a minute and 2 seconds left. I want a quick thing on the constitutional amendment for education funding. Critics have said that this is just a tax increase. Can you explain what the Con-Am is?
I think the Con-Am is the opportunity for the public to weigh in on whether or not we should add a surcharge on investment real property. That's a fundamental question that, you know, that we've struggled with here in the legislature, and it takes on many permutations. But that fundamental question of whether or not investment properties should be taxed for education is something that should be before the voters.
And so it will be up for the voters to decide.
It will be for the voters to decide.
Thank you. Thank you, Della, for being with us this morning. And thank you for being with us here. Unfortunately for me, because I got to get up early, we will be back next week for Live at the Legislature. Aloha.
Live at the Legislature is a live half-hour weekly news program that focuses on the issues, legislation, and topics of importance emerging from this year's legislative session. Each week, state senators and representatives provide a variety of perspectives on the issues from both sides of the aisle. Tune in to Live at the Legislature Weekly to get exclusive updates on what's happening in Hawaii's legislature.
Are you looking for an easy way to get involved in the legislative process? Stop by the Public Access Room located in room 401 at the Hawaii State Capitol. The public access room provides citizens of Hawaii's facilities, services, and equipment to enhance their ability to participate in the legislative process. The public is welcome to track and affect legislation pending before the Hawaii State Legislature.
Do you know your legislators? Visit capital.hawaii.gov and enter your street name to find detailed information about your representatives and senators. From your district number to the committees and current bills your legislators have introduced, this is an easy way to stay up to date with what is happening in your community. If you're looking for detailed information concerning Hawaii State Senate and House hearings, please visit olelo.org/gov-archives. Videos are arranged by date, with the most recent at the top of the list.
Live at the Legislature is a live half-hour weekly news program that focuses on the issues, legislation, and topics of importance emerging from this year's legislative session. Each week, state senators and representatives provide a variety of perspectives on the issues from both sides of the aisle. Tune in to Live at the Legislature Weekly to get exclusive updates on what's happening in Hawaii's legislature.
Are you looking for an easy way to get involved in the legislative process? Stop by the public access room located in room 401 at the Hawaii State Capitol. The public access room provides citizens of Hawaii's facilities, services, and equipment to enhance their ability to participate in the legislative process. The public is welcome to track and affect legislation pending before the Hawaii State Legislature.
Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us here today on Live at the Legislature. My name is Mika Briot, and today I'm joined with House Representative Andrea Tupola, who is the district rep for District 43, and she's also the minority leader. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good.
Okay, so last time we were on the show, you talked about your ukulele bash. How'd it go?
It was great. So the Ukulele Bash was our second annual. It was on April 20th at Ko'olina, the 4th Lagoon. We definitely want to thank Ko'olina for being a partner in this community activity for a lot of West Side students that actually have never gotten the chance to just come together for an ukulele festival. We have an ukulele festival in Waikiki, as you know, at Kapi'olani. We've had it at the Shell, but we've never had something on the west side. So this year was the second annual. There was over 300 children there. We gave away ukuleles. There was actually young performers that got to participate, as well as a lot of ukulele builders and experts. So we wanted the kids to see both sides, how to create the instrument as well as how to play it. And then a lot of them got to see some really, I think, stars in the up-and-coming ukulele world. I don't know if you know Honoka and Azita as well as Carly G, but two of those girls are actually still in high school, and they are just creating waves across the whole map with the ukulele. So I really wanted to inspire the kids to be able to take part in arts and do something as a legislator to really encourage more arts in the education system.
That's so awesome. Oh my gosh, it's so exciting. I love music, like you, music teacher. So HB 1401 is headed to the governor's desk, and that's the bill relating to mail by voting pilot project. What do you think about it?
So it is a pilot program. It's set to be only done in the county of Kauai, so it's any counties with underneath 100,000 residents, which would be that county. It's set to start in 2020. And so if you read through the bill, there's a lot of different things that it says about making sure that there's multiple drop points for it, that people will have accessibility 10 days before the actual election. So one of the parts of the preamble had stated that there are more people coming out to vote prior to election day, and so they wanted to pilot out and see if this was actually the case, where if we had all mail-in voting, would people be taking advantage of that? Is that a good way to go? So I think it's better than just jumping in and going into a statewide mandate. It's actually a pilot that needs to be evaluated after 2020 to see how many issues they had, whether or not the polling stations were actually workable, whether people knew what the new system was going to be. So I think for anything that we do in the state, it has to have a pilot so that we can actually give people some feedback and know-how about if a mandate was to come or if a law was to be passed about mail-in voting, that there would be some substantial amount of information that we could use as a research base to justify going in a different direction with the elections.
Yeah, I personally vote by mail. It's just so much more convenient. The Office of Elections actually estimated a cost savings of $750,000. What are we going to do with that money?
Well, I definitely think in the Office of Elections, you know, we've seen some election cycles where they ran out of ballots. We've seen some elections where certain polling locations had huge issues. So I'm hoping that we actually just take a new direction with the Office of Elections, try to clean it out, get a little bit more efficient, get into the 21st century and start to take advantage of things that, you know, might save us money, but also might help to make things more efficient.
Right. Efficiency is awesome. So one of your resos, HR 110, and then the House concurrent reso, HR 160, actually passed on both sides, the House and the Senate, unanimously. What was your intent behind that resolution?
So these resolutions deal with utilizing the correct Hawaiian names for places, valleys, on maps, on any education or state printed material, but also the correct spelling of it using kahakos and okinas. And so the intent of this was to really encourage that Hawaiian is the official language with English in the state of Hawaii, and making sure that we actually call these places by their correct names. I mean, have you ever heard of Mokoli'i? Do you know where that is? Have you swam out there, or have you gone out to the lookout at Pu'ualaka'a? Or if you've ever been to Keawaula, which these are all words that people don't know because we use other names for it. And so we really want to see the correct names used for these places because there's a history behind it. Because when people learn the history behind these places, they are going to become more connected to this place that we call home, that we call Hawaii. And we need to take this more seriously, that this is an official language, that it is the home culture of our state, and that we should acknowledge it as such.
I don't know where those places are, but I'm pretty sure I've been to them. So what's ahead this week as session's coming to a close?
Well, today we are having all-day caucus so we can discuss, I believe, 118 bills that are going to be voted on tomorrow. Any bills that came through conference committee, which actually started out with 548 bills. We had the past 2 weeks to kind of look at it, to determine if we're going with the House or the Senate version of it, and that's what we'll be voting on tomorrow. Then we have a recess, and then Thursday, the legislature closes up.
Thursday, wow. Gosh, it seems like it flew by since January, huh?
It's very quick, yes.
Okay, so let's close with a happy thought. What was your favorite moment about this past legislative session?
Well, I definitely think that, you know, making sure that I was able to pass a resolution that had to deal with the Hawaiian culture was important because the governor has stated that this is the year of the Hawaiian. And so a lot of people don't want to see a declaration of the Year of the Hawaiian without some substantial differences made so that the people of Hawaii feel like there is some change in the way that we look at the culture, the language. We want to make sure that the judiciary branch as well as other arms of the government acknowledge that there should be interpreters for the Hawaiian language. So I think that for me it was a high. They have the Hawaiian Immersion Day. There was a lot of schools that came through. Punana Leo, we had kaya punis across the state. So I love when students come out, and I love speaking to them and hearing their questions about, you know, what a legislator does, which for me is public service.
Yeah, public service is super awesome. So tell us about what you guys are doing after session.
Well, definitely for me, I have a lot of things going on in the district. We have a cleanup coming up. As you know, I regularly make sure to address illegal dumping, abandoned cars, which I know that there was a bill that passed through for abandoned cars, but it still is going to take people to actually get down to the road and make it happen. A bill doesn't just make all of the cars get off the road. You got to really call those agencies, call those tow companies, get all the wheels moving, literally get them moving off the street. And so cleanups, we have emergency preparedness fair on August 18th, which I host every year for my community. We have a town hall coming up to update the community on the Maili contamination that happened with the U.S. Coast Guard. We have a few more town halls that we have to get through. We have the back to school bash where we have Nanakuli Elementary get their enrollment done so that their school year starts off with the right number and the right amount of teachers. So lots of exciting stuff, definitely community minded, making sure that we still are listening to the concerns of our community and addressing it even after the legislative session is over.
That's so awesome, keeping yourself busy. Well, that's all we have for today, folks. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great day. Aloha.